If you find yourself being the captain on a ship and your ship is sinking because your deliverability is, tanking, going manual is not going to save the day. Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
Hey, this is Jack from emailsthatsell.com.
Word on the street is that you can get better deliverability by sending manually inside Gmail versus using an automation tool to send your emails. Is that true? Is that some kind of joke? Is there a catch? Or is it just the latest rumor going around? In this cast, Jack and I will explain literally everything you need to know in order to master deliverability once and for all. Spoiler alert, it's not what you think. Or maybe it is. So check out for yourself and enjoy the show. So what are we going to talk about today, Jack? Tell us.
I got a question from a listener, Sam. Shout out to you. You asked a really good question relating to automation or manual outreach. So I'll just read this question and then we'll tackle it. So your question goes like this: automation versus manual. If you're doing slow mail, isn't it technically better just to manually email everyone in something like Gmail? I've heard recently Gmail can tell when it's being used to send in blast via software, and deliverability is going down. So best way, if someone doesn't mind, is to just have your VA send 100% of your emails manually, schedule the follow-ups, etc. What's your take on that?
Basically, the person is asking, my chance of deliverability is lowered when I'm using a software to do that. And the answer is yes, it's absolutely right and absolutely correct. Now, the real question that one has to ask himself or herself is the trade-off between I'm going to lose a little bit of deliverability, but I'm going to gain in reliability and in consistency. So let's take one separately. So imagine now you're doing it manually. What does that mean? That means you're going to have to track, follow-ups, unless you don't want to track follow-ups. That means someone's going to have access to your Gmail account if you don't want to do it yourself, which is potentially, security problem either. And it's going to be hard to keep track of who needs to be following up or not. This is basically what I was doing, and you're talking 3 minutes to 30 minutes difference. So probably like a time 10. So if you're okay with that, if you have a very low outbound, then that's okay. The other thing is it's not just for software that do bulk emails. It's any software using the Gmail API, for example. It's very easy to figure out this email has been sent through a software. Which one? You can also figure that one out because every software has got a certain number when they're using the Gmail API. So every email being sent through QuickMail will sort of have this sort of number attached to it. But that's true from any other software. If you're using Close.io, for example, to send your own emails or any other, software that sends outside of Gmail, you're going to have the same problem. One more thing now is that you don't have just Gmail, you also have Outlook. And Outlook has a slightly different way of doing it. Rather than actually embedding directly into the email that, hey, it's been done through a software, they will actually use a different type of IP to actually send your email. So when this is sent from Outlook, they will use a certain type of IP address. And if it is sent through a software, they will use a different type of IP address, which may indicate why, Outlook's got a better deliverability because it's a bit harder, I think, for Gmail to figure out, is this email actually being automated or not?
Yeah, I think if you're listening and you don't have such a strong technical background, you may be sitting there saying, all right, so back to the question, is it better to send it manually or should I use this tool? Let's beat someone over the head with the answer here. What are the trade-offs? Like plain English. I've heard you say a couple things. Maybe I can summarize it and you can make sure I got it right.
Yeah, let's do that.
Number one, if you're considering sending manually, you will have better deliverability by sending manually.
Yes.
That is true. Okay. Now, to what extent? I think that's a little bit of a gray area. Probably.
Correct.
Okay. But we're also not saying that sending with a tool, any tool, puts you in Gmail hell or the spam folder automatically. Anytime you schedule an email with a tool like Gmail, it's being tracked. So I'm hearing that there's a trade-off for deliverability on one hand and sort of efficiency on the other. And that is the decision to make. Is it worth the extra time and really prospect management, making sure you're following up on time? Is it worth the trade-off that you're getting from a lower deliverability rate? Did I summarize that for the non-tech folk? Or even, if you're technical, that's fine too, but you still need to know, or you'd probably like to have some guidance.
Yeah, I want to demystify a few more things actually while we're at it. There is also this idea that, we can warm up email by just automatically sending emails between people that know each other. If this is done through a software, I think the jury is still out. It may actually have zero impact, or it may have some impact, but right now what we're seeing is that it's not clear-cut yet.
Okay.
So it's very difficult to know that by using an API, you're going to warm up your domain, because basically Gmail knows that you're actually sending through an API and it's all automated. So it's going to be kind of tricky to sort of like warm up the email that way.
Yeah. So if you're listening, I'm hearing this happy medium place is use Outlook, because at the moment,
that's right.
It's like best of both worlds. Okay. Because from my understanding, when you send with Outlook, you can use a tool, but it looks like it was sent manually. So really, like Jack's cut to the chase, what do I do is get your company on Outlook and you're good to go. You don't have to think about this anymore. But do we have any idea of what this trade-off, if let's say we're unable or unwilling to get our organization off of Gmail? I mean, how important is it that a company is making the switch? Because one thing that comes out of my mind is, okay, this is great. We can tell people to switch, but then in 2 months from now, this whole thing can be different. Outlook can suddenly play the same game that Gmail does, and now that advice, all the effort of switching is pointless. What about that?
Sure, but at the same time, this is cat and mouse game. It keeps on moving. There's nothing that stays still. So sure, the advice we give today is not going to be valid maybe in 6 months' time. In fact, we do see the advantage of Outlook actually shrinking slightly in the recent months. So
I have an idea. I think it's because everyone's catching on, and now the shitty people are.
Yeah, it could be.
And now the rookies are using Outlook, right? That's what I think is going on. I think the pros have been knowing about this for a little while, but now it's come one, come all. All right. There's another potential happy medium point, and this is for the technical minded. Don't worry. It's going to be worthwhile, because I'm pretty sure this is part of the moving cat and mouse game that people will, if they're not already playing it, it will happen. And it's about using browser automation to send your emails just like a human would. That's the simplest way to think about this, is having your computer manage your Google Chrome browser and actually go to gmail.com, then pass in your username and password, then click sign in, then click compose message, paste in the subject line, paste in the content, click send, wait a random number of seconds, and do it again until your prospect list has been sent. Is that the next version of quick mail?
That's some other thing I want to say, because some people will say, hey, there's this great tool, works directly natively in Gmail, and that's all good. I used to actually think that, kind of naively, but I have a discussion with one of the founder of one of those tools, and I told him, I say, hey, you got a big advantage over QuickMail in terms of deliverability, because you're not like an external tool using the Gmail API, you're directly within Gmail. And he said, no, Jeremy, we're actually using the Gmail API. And I actually didn't know that, but most of the plugins that you find that are within Gmail are actually not using the Gmail interface itself. They actually do use the Gmail API on the back end. And they have to do that for the follow-ups anyway.
But I think the real question that we're all wondering is is the most optimum cold email thing going to be, or is it already just a person or a team that manually does these activities that a software has been doing? Is that what we're going to see in 2020?
I don't think so. And maybe that's the subject for a broader cast, the future of the cold email number, part 6 or whatever.
Let's say we did that today and it really worked.
Today, yes.
Would we have the best?
And it could work. It could be effectively that the best solution at the moment would be to have everything automated within your own local machine.
Yeah.
So Gmail will have no really idea about, you're automating their own interface.
Yeah.
Which obviously is going to break. It's going to be really hard to maintain. that may be worth if you're extremely technical. The other thing is, switching to Outlook, obviously, to do the same sort of thing that also work.
Do you know what I think? I think we're actually having a conversation that's not getting to the root of the problem here. And I think we should be talking instead about which tools, should we use an API, should we hire a team, should we do it through browser? The better question is, how do we send emails that get more engagement? Because Gmail and more spam filters today are using engagement as an indicator of whether or not you're a good email or not. And think about this. It's important because if you're using Close.io or QuickMail or Zapier to send emails to someone who really needs that email, Gmail knows, hey, let's pass along. This sender is really killing it. Their list cares. We're going to pass that through no matter if you have a monkey on your laptop pressing send. It doesn't matter because your engagement's high. I think outbound software is getting these kind of questions because the emails that are being sent to people who just don't care. They don't want to hear about it. The message sucks. The targeting sucks. The personalization sucks. And therefore, even if you sent it manually, you're going to start having a harder time inboxing. What do you think?
I think this is spot on. We can keep on talking about getting, a certain percentage of deliverability, but the best way to get your email delivered is sending email people want to read, simple as that.
So is that where we should focus? I really do think this is where the strategy behind cold email needs to be spending a lot of time is, okay, all complicated API type discussions, put them on the table. Instead, figure out how to freak people out in a good way with your cold emails. And if you focus on that, then you won't really have to play this deliverability cat and mouse game.
Yes.
We have a yes from Jeremy. It's been confirmed. Okay. Well, fair enough. We're not going to switch CAS because I think take this topic of how do you increase engagement for deliverability. That's its own separate thing.
That's right.
But for right now, I'm pretty comfortable with leaving it at this. It's like maybe today sending manually is a better idea. But like you said in the beginning, it comes at a trade-off. You're going to have to stay on top of prospects. It's a pain. It's why you made QuickMail in the first place, isn't it?
That's correct. It was more of a time.
Do you want to tell that story for?
Sure, I can tell you the story. So I was basically spending 2 hours a day to start my business. And I realized that 30 minutes out of those 2 hours were just to keep track of follow-ups, which, as we just said, it's not about the sending. It's about figuring out who replied, who didn't, so I can send follow-ups. And that's, why that thing's been automated. So in the end, you can effectively just, use a tool like QuickMail to just create tasks. And then those tasks will be please send an email reminder to this person, right? But I think that, like you mentioned, it's spending the attention to the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, not all tools sending emails are used for cold email. We got perfectly valid tools that will send email that, like you mentioned, people want to receive, and that's perfectly fine, and that's everywhere. It's only in a case of trying to send a lot of email that people don't want to read, then suddenly you have problems. And I think that you're right. The focus should not be on sending manually or automatically, even though you may gain a certain percentage by going manual. Having the headache that comes with it, is that really worth versus actually trying to spend all that effort into crafting a good email that people want to hear?
Yeah.
Or to read, in this case.
Well said. So, and just keep in mind on the flip side of the coin, if you did send manually, but you sent terrible emails, you're still going to have problems. That's not the answer. It's just like we keep coming back to, how do you convince the spam filters that your emails are worth delivering? And you do that by increasing engagement, showing that people like opening and replying and clicking on your emails. These are all really good things that, just to reiterate one last time, deserve our concentration as opposed to some of these cat and mouse tactics.
And if you find yourself being the captain on a ship and your ship is sinking because your deliverability is, tanking, going manual is not going to save the day. So,
right.
So just be mindful of where you're spending your effort. And
right.
And like I mentioned, there's a lot of...
Well, hold on. I just want to piggyback off that. Yeah, it's like, running with your analogy. You could be standing on the ship that's going down and worrying about what color flip-flops you have. Really, that's not where you should be focusing your energy. Instead, it's all about the major thing. And in this case, it's fix the ship that's sinking. In our email world, that's How do you get people to start caring about your emails?
And one thing I want to leave the listener with is don't assume necessarily, like I mentioned, this is so easy to assume like, hey, in order to get good deliverability, I need to send the email manually. So, in Gmail, and therefore I'm going to take one of those plugins in Gmail to actually send automatically.
Yeah.
Because, same mistake as I was doing this assumption that actually they will be sending through the Gmail, interface. In fact, they're just using the Gmail API on the back end. So it may appear like, oh, this is a solution, but it may not be. And I'm not trying to sort of like force you or sell you, over quick mail, but it's just that, that may actually be fooling you into this is the solution, but it's not. Do you see what I mean, Jack?
That's true. I do. And what's interesting is I think Google figured it out. They figured out how to create an algorithm that encouraged people to send very good, high quality emails and make the inbox better. They did it because if for some reason we thought that volume worked best, we would be telling people, you want more leads, do volume. Or if we thought there was some stupid hack, like, oh, all you have to do is pay a person to send it manually, then it would be out there. But, they're smarter than that. They know that engagement is going to probably be the biggest indicator of whether or not cold email is going to work for you. So hats off to Google. I think they figured it out as much as we love to hate them.
So well said. All right, guys. So stop worrying about like sending manual or automated and start focusing on the right things to get your cold email off the ground.
Great cast, Jeremy.
Great cast, Jack.
So the question, should you send manually? Should you send through an API? Should you use Outlook? Questions revolving around deliverability. And like we mentioned in this cast, the answer is going to keep changing. It's what Jeremy calls a cat and mouse game here with the spam filters. But at the end of the day, this question is a bit distracting from the real important element, which is how do you send emails that get lots of engagement? How do you show the spam filters that your email, no matter what tool is sending it, is worth getting delivered to the prospect? And that is the crux of the issue. Anytime you're wondering about deliverability, today you can realistically improve things by focusing on improving the quality of the kinds of messages that you're sending to prospects. The better you answer, how am I going to make my prospect's day through a cold email, the better your deliverability will be.
Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high vibe by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher, or TuneIn. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast
so they can send awesome emails
and make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.